Hello, kiddos. This is Rich with the X's and O's of Life interview edition, and I have Joe Telustis. Yeah,
Yeah, very good,
there you go.
actually.
Um, on me here, another interview, folks, from the Podmatch app, and this fella has what we got. We have addiction, we have charity work, we have mental illness, or maybe some murder somewhere in there. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, this fella got a. There's a lot to unpack here. So, um, definitely what 35 years in the broadcasting kind of
Yep,
sphere,
it's
which
been
is insane. I don't even like talking to people for 35 minutes. So you got 35 years. So good luck there. But yeah. So Joe, you want to go ahead and yap to some folks and tell them what's going on with you and tell them your story, and we'll do what we normally do and riff on things. And
sure.
yeah,
Well, my story's a long one. We'll get into it, but
there.
I am currently an addiction uh, coach. I'm a peer addiction coach at a place called Face It Together. We're based in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, but I work with clients in all 48 states, 3 provinces in Canada, Spain, the UK, and New Zealand.
Jeez.
So, thank you, Internet. And especially during COVID, we expanded quite a bit. And what we do is not counseling, it's not therapy, it's not treatment. What it is it's called peer coaching, and that means that I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, I'm none of those things. I'm just somebody. I'm just a schmo who's been in recovery for 15 years and has been through a lot and learned a lot of things along the way. And as a coach, it's actually kind of freeing because there are things that I can do that maybe aren't exactly embraced in a clinical uh, environment. And there's nothing wrong with a clinical environment, but for a lot of people, they've tried that and they don't like it. They don't respond to it. They'd much rather have a human being who's been there and who can, when you can say a word, it's like if you try to explain, find the words to explain depression. It's kind of hard. You got to reach around and to do things, or anxiety, or any of other things that go on. But if you're talking to somebody who's been there, all you need is this. You need a nod and you get it. And that's kind of what we do is we have a building full of coaches here. And when I say, a bunch, it's probably 6 here. We also have an office in Colorado Springs where we've got another 3. And all of us are from different backgrounds, different ages, different demographics, different places geographically. But we all have one thing in common, and that's we're all a bunch of knuckleheads. And we have been through our own stories and our own process, our own growing up, our own, adult lives, the pluses, the minuses, the good days, the bad days. And here we are, survivors. And so what we do is, as coaches, and what we try to do in the organization is match up a coach with a client. And that's about finding some place to connect, something that you have in common. And sometimes it makes for very strange bedfellows, but that's kind of the one thing I think I found in the time I've been doing this is you can take a whole lot of conventional wisdom, throw it out the door, and just the preconceptions that people from the outside come looking in are based on TV shows, movies, whatever the case may be. And in reality, the things that actually work for a lot of people are things that are entirely different. In some ways, they're not too sexy. In some ways, they're very dramatic. But it's a very personal thing, and it's a very one-on-one thing, and it's really about building a relationship with somebody and building a trust with somebody who maybe hasn't had a lot of trust in their life. So, and my story goes about 49 million ways. Started, was born in a little town in South Dakota called Forestburg, the melon capital of South Dakota,
Hmm.
which is a
Okay.
story in itself. Um, I grew up in southeast Minnesota in a little town I come from farm country. I come from farm people. I had in my radio career, which was a total accident, but it started when I was 17, and working at a little a little 1,000-watt daytime AM station in Wabasha, Minnesota, on the Mississippi River. And all I can say is I was big with dairy farmers. So I was the cows dug the cows dug the show. I started had my first programming job when I was 25. Did a talk show for about 5,000 episodes. I programmed a radio station in the Twin Cities for 6 years, which was the best of times and the worst of times. I came back to South Dakota and ran the public radio network here for 8.5 years. So I kind of, my world has been in the upper Midwest, but as far as the environments I've been in and the situations I've been in, it has run the gamut. And I mean, it was for something that was never planned. And I kind of see the world as kind of two kinds of people. You have destination people and you have journey people. Destination people has this crazy concept. It's called goals. And I've never really kind of understood that. But they have a focus on something they want to do, and the decisions they make and they go forward are all towards this goal. And if that works, great. That's marvelous. I'm a journey guy. It's about the things that I run into along the way. And I've been very fortunate in that I've run into opportunities and had the chances to do things and meet people and go places and learn things that I would have never dreamt of. And it has been anything but boring. It has been, I suppose there was a day when I was in college where I was nursing a hangover on a Saturday and it was raining and I'm on the couch and I watched TV for an afternoon. That's probably the last time I was really bored. Besides that, everything has been going fast and often too fast, which we can get into too. Never planned a minute of it, but I wouldn't trade it for anything because it has been and continues to be a life full of surprises and the opportunity to meet a lot of different people and do a lot of different things. And I read a column in the New York Times here a few months ago, and there was this guy, and he was saying the problems we have in the world today is because we don't experience awe anymore. Like, awe is an awesome, those awe moments. Mm-hmm. And I'm reading this, and he says that we don't have any more surprises, don't have any of this, don't have any of that. And I put it down, and I said, that's the biggest load of crap that I've read in quite a while. Because there's not a day that goes by if I'm not looking where I have an oh wow moment. It's up to me to have my eyes open and ready for it. Sometimes it's something big, sometimes it's something small, but there's, unless I get to the point where I've discovered everything about everybody currently living and
he lost. He'll come back. We've had having some issues on his side for whatever reason. He'll pop back in here momentarily. But yeah, so far interesting. I don't know if I necessarily agree with everything with the awe part. I have a few little points to bring up there potentially, but I'm hoping we can get him back here in a timely fashion here. Like I said, I don't. There were some. Oh, there we go. He's back.
Sorry about that. I don't think it's anything I did, but my screen just went. Whoop.
Yeah, I don't know. It was doing that initial thing when you were trying to get in. initially too. What's kind of ironic is because you are a little kind of like buffery occasionally, but it's
Okay.
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 But it's interesting because none of your hiccups happen till you got on camera. I don't know, the weird thing, but I was just kind of talking to myself there. So I will say I slightly disagree mildly with the whole it's kind of hard to awe people now. And the only reason I say that is because I think that everything is so available to you. And like almost nothing is off limits now. You know,
Hmm.
you're
Hmm.
kind of able to see anything and everything that you want or don't want. So I think we are a little desensitized a bit, but I also completely understand what you're saying is yeah, look, keep your eyes open, man. Um, you're very well going to be able to see some things that you probably never saw before. Keep yourself available and open. So I see kind of
Yeah.
both sides of that spectrum.
Yeah.
So I think that fellow was more so coming from like, hey, we're so desensitized to everything. It's like you watch the news, murder, rape, arson. Oh, that sounds like a Tuesday.
Hmm. I I understand, and I understand the access thing, and I understand the desensitized thing. Um, but I really think it's about what are you open to? It's are you open to the unexpected? Because there's a lot of things we can seek anything out, but it's the stuff that we weren't seeking out that gets to us that we run into by chance or we run into as just a course of a day that if we're open to seeing something new and learning something new, going somewhere new, uh, it's the things that we don't expect.
And that's where you're.
And yeah, and I think and that kind of plays in well, you'll find as we go along that there I think there's a lot of things that play into why people find themselves in situations where they're using substances that's out of control and uh and things aren't going right, and there's some whys in there, finding out what the why is.
Right.
And part of it is it's also easy to have access to things, but it's also easy to totally isolate yourself so that you're nothing but an observer or a gawker. And and there's a difference between that and being a participant. By being in life and putting yourself into situations and scenarios where the unexpected can happen. Because that's really where the cool stuff comes from, is the stuff
Right.
you didn't expect. It's the stuff that you didn't see coming, and the stuff, and for me anyway, that makes me go, whoa, didn't see that coming. And that's the things that keep things exciting. If it's just purely you being curious and casting about, yeah, that's really different than it used to be. There's also if you limit yourself to certain areas that you just open yourself up and you take whatever comes at you, or more often than not, you've got people who will just be looking for things that reaffirm their view of the world, whatever that view is. That's one thing, but it's quite another to put yourself into a situation where you don't know what's going to happen. And just for the sheer fact of being a participant and having an open mind, uh, and I'm not saying everything is wow, sometimes it's little stuff that I know for me anyway that makes me go wow. Sometimes it's a very little thing. Sometimes it's a very human thing. But I've been on the planet for 62 years and I haven't seen it all yet. So not from a lack of trying, but uh, you know, I haven't seen it yet. But I hear what you're saying. Access is everything. It's the
Right.
stuff that happens to us by chance that is the most interesting to me anyway.
Yeah, and not for nothing there. Um, I as desensitized as I think we are as people.
Oh yeah.
Um,
It causes its own new set of problems, that's for sure.
well, yeah, I mean, because you almost kind of accidentally get horse blinders on
You
because
can.
you're like,
Yeah.
eh, I'm not gonna. I have seen everything I could see here, which isn't true, but sometimes you kind of keep yourself closed-minded off, and yeah, I think it kind of is easy to kind of just stay in your lane and
Mm-hmm.
say like, yeah, I'm good, man. I'm gonna stay and do whatever I'm doing and not really worry about the things around me. But like you said with your journeyman situation, I mean, yeah, I mean, and we even kind of did an episode, me and my co-host here, a month or so. I don't even know. I can't even tell anymore. But it essentially was we both kind of live our lives a little bit like most opportunities kind of come to us, or we come by them, or we
Mm-hmm.
cross them. We're not really outwardly seeking them out, whether that be a job, relationship, whatever. It just sometimes tends to kind of come to us, and those end up being the more lucrative and more beneficial ones, positive
Mm-hmm.
ones, than when you go out and seek something. It's kind of like whenever you're single, right? You feel like, oh my god, I can't get a date for the life of me. But when you're with someone, it's like the broads are just knocking at your door. It's like, I can't, man. I'm with her. It's just one of those silly little things. Because is that
Mm-hmm.
really the case? No, I just think that unfortunately, maybe it's the way you perceive things, and those opportunities are still there. You're just not seeing them. So
What one way that I look at it, and this plays into it's a common thing that I see every day with clients is um it's very easy today to become isolated. You can be an
yeah,
entity unto yourself and you can have all kinds of the world coming into you electronically or whatever. Um, but everybody needs human interaction. And some people need different kinds of human interaction. Some people need more than others.
right.
But there's that interaction because, I always say smart people who are bored and isolated are asking for trouble. It's just if trouble will find you.
Yeah, they're called
Um,
serial killers.
yeah, it's when you venture out and become a participant, and at least you're present. Then one of my favorite words is serendipity. Good things that happen by chance.
Good word.
And I love that word, serendipity. It's if you aren't participating in some form in the world, if you aren't out in the world and are at least open to the unexpected, the unexpected is never going to happen. It has to be you have to be a player in a certain sense of that going forward. And for me, sometimes it's hard for me to understand this because if I'm anything, I'm curious. And curiosity is, if you have curiosity, you will never be bored. If you have curiosity and go forward, because there are always things to learn, always people to meet. It's just, you have to be open to it. And
Right.
it's not always looking for the home run. I grew up baseball is a great metaphor for a lot of things in life and in the world
Fair
that
enough.
I work in. Uh, Basically, because it's so filled with failure. There's failure everywhere. Uh,
You
but
can be in the Hall of Fame if you hit 3 out of 10 times. So yeah,
if you only fail 7 out of 10 times, you're a multimillionaire. If you only fail 6 out of 10 times, you're like an all timer,
yeah.
an legend. It's how you deal with failure and
So
how you look
silly,
at
man.
it.
That's such a great little analogy. My
Oh,
God.
baseball's full of them. I mean, what is baseball keeps track of errors.
Yeah.
When you screw up, it has its own category up on the scoreboard. Runs,
Hmm.
hits, errors. E7. Yeah, we're talking about you, pal.
Yeah.
E7. Um,
Hmm.
but it's because the difference between hitting 300 and hitting 400 in a major league season, which is 162 games, is a hit a week. One
Really?
hit,
That's it?
one hit a week.
Wow.
That's the difference. But it's hard. It's hard to do. The
Huh.
beauty of it is that you come back the next day and try over. The tough
Yeah.
thing about it is you come back the next day and have to try it all over.
Yeah.
Dang it.
There's always that little saying where relievers need to have a short memory.
Can you still hear me? Because I
Yeah.
just went dark again. I don't
Yeah.
know
You
what's
you
going on.
flickered, but it's not anything like before.
Okay. I'm not sure what's going on here because there we go. So yeah, baseball is a great analogy for a whole lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I grew up watching the Minnesota Twins through decades of futility. But I remember as a kid, the two guys I watched that I really liked were Tony Oliva and Rod Carew.
Oh,
And
Rod Carew.
Rod Carew is something else. And the thing is he kind of played the game differently than everybody else. You know, he wasn't swinging for the fences all the time. He was just, lacing doubles up the gap or bunting 6 times a week and getting he had a whole different approach and he was so smooth.
Yeah.
I go back and
Which
watch
is
films.
wild if you look at his batting stance. It's like, good God, it looks like triple.
Yep. But like my old coach said, it's not where you start, it's where you end up. And when it was time, he could go anything and do anywhere. But he, again, analogies. He played the game very differently. He played it his way, and was very successful at it. And also, pretty much had his head on straight. He wasn't a person who. I mean, he was there because he liked to play baseball, and not for fame, fortune, and everything else. Otherwise, he would have left Minnesota a lot earlier. But yeah, there's analogies all over the place. As you go through life, I've been on the planet now 62 years, and which is funny because in the business I was in, I was always the young guy. I was always the young guy. And my first programming job was in Rochester, Minnesota, home of the Mayo Clinic. And I was 25 years old. I know why I got hired, because I was cheap and enthusiastic. I inherited 12 guys, and 10 of them were older than I was and had been in the business longer than I had. So it was always like, prove it time.
Yeah.
Prove it. But
That's weird, man. Like having your boss be younger than you a little bit. Like,
oh, sure. Yeah. And it's like, show me, and being in that environment. I mean, it's not like you're around normal people. I have stories I could go on for ages about the station that I programmed in the Twin Cities. I mean, it was the most unusual, very successful, and most dysfunctional place I've ever been.
Yeah.
And that's where I saw the things that are involved in personality and relative mental health and a lot of other things, the same things that make you great, memorable, innovative, are the same things that make you a nightmare to try to manage. So I kind of found myself on both sides of the fence there, because I was not exactly normal myself. I didn't really realize it at the time. So that's when my use went totally outside the window, because of the way that I was thinking. And one of the things that when we get into the world of addiction is, people think the goal of addiction, or the goal of working with addiction, is sobriety, and it's not. It's not. There's a lot of really unhappy, maladjusted, sober people walking around.
Yeah.
It's a temporary state. Reasons for use are many, but really what people are looking for, or maybe lacking in their life, is connection of some kind. And that's the way I approach it. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. And it's through connection that we can really start to examine who we are, what we are, why we think the way we do, and is the thinking that we're engaged in, the process of going through, really the one that's best for us and the one that can work the best. And it's often not. It's a big subject. I don't know where you want to hop in on it, but it's a big subject.
Well, let's kind of go here. So
yep.
What what got you into it, and what did you start with?
Sure. Um, Growing up, I was not a party guy. I was not high school. I didn't smoke pot till I went to college. Drank a tiny bit, but was really pretty much where I was at. It's not uncommon for mental health to start showing up as an issue with young men when they're in their late teens, early 20s. And the self awareness level, at least in my case, was just about zero. Because we experience the world the way we experience it. We understand the world to the level that we experience it. And why would we ever think that somehow we were not normal? Because why would I be anything other than how everybody else experiences the world? As life went on, I thought everybody was a nervous wreck every day. I thought everybody was in charge of keeping everybody else happy. I thought everybody worried all the time. I thought, a lot of different things. What did I know? Why did I know that that wasn't the norm? To go along with that, I started experimenting. I mean, it's really funny. You can be, I kind of divide time in different ways. I look at time different than a lot of people do. Normally, we measure large amounts of time is in BC and AD. I looked at the world growing up in a small town as being BC and AC, before cable and after cable.
Okay, fair enough.
Because you could be very worldly about certain things and totally naive about others. And that was kind of my life, is that there are some things. I was well traveled, well educated, had a very stable home life. There are other things I didn't know anything about. The word mental illness I never heard it,
Right.
even the words, let alone what it was. My extent is that you had, somebody with 21 personalities. Wow, that's heavy, but I had no idea of what mental health problems could be, how they could affect a person, how they
Right.
could affect your perception, and a lot of things. So I started jumping in, and I've never been somebody, I talked about the journey person.
Right.
I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. And
Yeah, you
and
grow up first, yeah.
well, yeah, yeah, indeed. So I was, from the minute I got out of school, I was floating. I mean, the only thing I knew for sure when I got out of college was I didn't want to do that. And, and this radio kept bopping along for me. I kept leaving it saying, okay, that was fun. Now it's time to grow up and get a real job. And I kept coming back to it. And I think I was somewhere in my 30s when I said, maybe this is what I'm going to do for a while. But I never felt quite right. It's like my head was always about an eighth of a turn off.
Okay.
Now, instead of having the awareness, which I think I'd have today, because we do talk about some things today that we didn't talk about back then.
Right.
Was, I would have probably sought out help a lot earlier, but I decided, and this was kind of a key, is that how are men raised in this country?
That's what I was going to go with.
We are raised to be lone rangers.
Right.
We're supposed to be strong, silent type. Don't whine about anything.
Right.
If you got a problem, fix it yourself and keep it to yourself. And for God's sakes, don't talk about anything that has anything to do with feelings or anything else.
Basically, the best way to put it is like man up, pussy. That's kind of
exactly, and it's all wrong.
Yeah.
It's all unhealthy for most people. Mm-hmm. I suppose that fits for somebody somewhere, but
it shouldn't though.
It didn't fit for me.
Shouldn't. Look, I not to deviate away from here, but I literally did an episode last night. Me and the wife were going to get a puppy, and we were very hell bent on getting them, and everyone was ready. I put down a deposit. before we got him, puppy died, and
Hmm.
never got to meet him. All I saw was pictures. Found myself crying on the porch, breaking down, looking at his picture like it was some kind of long lost love. And people kind of, I don't want to say they judged me, but they questioned me. It's like, dude, how are you this broken up over something that you've never even met? I'm like, first of all, I'm like, fuck off. I'll feel how I want to feel. Um, Secondly, it's like I made that connection. I felt that love. And even though you didn't meet that puppy, like you didn't feel him, you didn't do anything like that, you had that connection. And it's okay to not be okay. And
Yeah.
that is exactly what fellas do now. I mean, look, as you can see in the corner there, the little icon there, my co-host is a black fella. And you think, as white men, we have a default thing doing our emotions. That's like from coming from his ears or his mouth. That's like a sign of weakness.
Yep. Yep.
You are ostracized in that community, and it's just like, God bless America. It should not be that way. Like it's okay. Just because you have an Audi doesn't mean you can't have feelings. Like it's okay.
And feelings and emotions are what they are. I mean, uh, I I can't explain a lot of them, but they're there. And and so you can either do one of two things. You can explore them or you can deny them. And denying just digs the hole deeper. Um,
That's what
I
most do.
Yeah, exactly. And it's incredibly unhealthy, and it leads to all kinds of dysfunction that went on. So here I am, trying to figure things out. And somewhere in my head, I said, well, it must be chemical somewhere. So I'm going to try things as they come along and
Right.
to see if it would make a difference.
So the journeyman thing fell apart there, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I discovered later, much later, as far as there's a lot of things
Sorry, you
that
hear noises in the background. This cat.
no, that's okay.
Sorry.
Uh, there, there, you find words for things maybe later. But for most of the people, I'll just say this: most of the people who come to see me, everybody's different. Everybody has their own story, but I do see commonalities, and just about everybody I see fits into some of this. Number one, just about everybody who walks through the door is smart. Lack of intelligence, not an issue.
Right. Which
If
is
anything,
perception, I would say.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's because what's the perception? Perception is you're weak, you're morally insufficient. If you really loved me, you would quit. All of these things, that's what we have been shown. But just about everybody comes through as smart. In fact, if there's a problem, it's a problem that we're too smart and that we depend on our smarts too much. Another thing we have in common is we like to go fast. We like to think fast. We like to physically go fast. Why? Because we can. Why? Because sometimes it's a lot of fun.
I never heard that idea. I never heard that from anyone.
Oh, it's fundamental. It's fundamental to how I got where I am today. Sometimes it gets us in a great deal of trouble of going fast. And somewhere along the line, we were not introduced to the concept of just because we can doesn't mean we should.
Right.
Most people who run into these kind of problems, and I was right there, right down Broadway, was I go too fast. And if when I was born, I was issued a window sticker, like on a new car, nowhere on there is the patience package, option package. Patience is something that has to be learned. It has to be practiced. It is not part of the original equipment. And when we go too fast all the time, we start to make mistakes. We start to think that we can think our way through anything. And often early in life, when we're doing that, we're rewarded for that. Rich, he's a problem solver. He can see something that's coming and he can think through it and find a solution. And isn't that great? You get patted on the head, you get rewarded with promotion, you do all this other stuff. You're a problem solver. Well, pretty soon you start to believe your own BS, and it's
ironically enough, that's what I do for work, by the way.
Yeah, and it's like well, yeah, and you know what? You and I are probably on average pretty good problem solvers. My problem is I kind of started to think that, well, maybe that's my way to approach anything, and that if I try hard enough, I can think my way through it. And it didn't stop me from trying for 40 years.
Right.
But you start to think that, okay, I can solve problems. And then for me, it branched out from there was, not only can I solve my problems, I can help other people solve theirs. I'm responsible for people, family, guys at work. I want them to do well. I want them to have an environment where they can do their thing.
Right.
And so what does that mean to me? It means to me that I'm the person who's supposed to look out for trouble and to solve problems. And it wasn't until much later in life that the concept of some things you have control over and some things you don't came to me. I find that most of the things in the addiction world, the concepts are not difficult to understand. They just never occurred to me. It never occurred to me that there are some things I don't have control over. I thought I was
smart for your own good almost.
Yeah, absolutely. Overthinking.
I work tech support. I work tech support, and it could be something very simple as, they call in, their TV isn't working, whatever, and I can say, okay, well, did you do this, 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 and this? But if I don't ask, hey, is your TV actually on? Sometimes you miss that really simple thing. And see, I thought where you were going to go with, you're trying to take care of Tom, Dick, and Harry, and you're like, oh yeah, Joe's here too, and we'll figure out Joe later on. But no.
Yeah, well, it's complex.
Yeah.
And learning to slow down for me and for a lot of the people I see is not easy, but it's necessary. I used to fashion myself a multitasker. Yeah, I can do 3 things at once.
A fellow that can do that, good luck.
No problem. No, I found out I'm not a multitasker. I can do 3 things at once, and I can do them all half-assed.
Yeah.
That's when I start to make mistakes. What happens when I make mistakes? Then I got to go back and I got to fix the mistake. Now I'm really behind. So what's my answer? Let's go twice as fast.
God.
To try to go forward, but it's, what the punchline to a lot of jokes is, it seemed like a good idea at the time.
Yeah.
That's the story of my life. It seemed like a logical answer at the time. As I look back now, I'm going, what was I thinking? But that's exactly it. My thinker, this is the part that wasn't working right.
You're the walking cliche of hindsight's 2020 there.
Oh God, which totally prepared me.
You can see it though, and I think that's the difference between you and a lot of folks. The fact that you're able to do what you're able to do for folks, that you're like, yeah, I was able to slow it down and say, hey, I was making these fatal mistakes. Don't do that. There you go.
I often tell people my job is to help you understand and not make the same mistakes that I did, so that you'll have plenty of time left over to make your own.
Yeah.
It's just you won't have to make these again.
Make your own mistakes, not these ones.
Well, yeah. But it's like my answer to a situation was, maybe I just need to go faster. And that's where you got into substances that would let you go faster.
Okay.
Right. I also, when I was 23, I was doing a morning show on a radio station here in Sioux Falls, actually, and had no idea what I was doing, which is always when it was the most fun. to do
I
that.
like what I'm doing for a living here. Yeah.
Yeah,
Basically.
it's and that was, we could go into a diatribe about radio all day long and how a perfect business ruined itself at exactly the wrong time. Because radio used to be, when I was a kid, radio was a place where the zanies went. That's where they went, because that was the place they could go and push, push the envelope.
Right.
Then bankers got involved, and bankers didn't know what they were doing. And at the same time, this thing called the internet came along, which gave you ultimate access and ultimate freedom, ultimate distribution. And that's where on the zanies went. That looks like a lot more fun. And because I don't have people telling me what I can't do.
Right.
So they would go, but,
kind of come full circle though, right? It's like now podcast is now kind of completely and uncensored. You can do or be whatever you want to be.
Here's how a guy put it to me, and I've made it a practice to spend as much time with people who are significantly younger than me.
Hi.
Because they make me look at the world differently. And this was years ago, and it's the first thing he said to me was, because I said I was getting out of the radio business, or I thought about radio business because I could see it was going away. And he said, "You aren't in the radio business." He says, "You're in the content business. Radio is a method of distribution, and it used to operate in a world of limited methods of distribution. There were gatekeepers everywhere. Then came the internet, and you had virtually unending access available to you at your fingertips for distribution."
Pun intended, by the way, with the whole virtually idea there.
Yeah. So it's like, concentrate on content, concentrate on what it is you're doing, and don't worry so much about how other people receive it, because it's ubiquitous now. There are, anybody can do anything, and it's a matter then of finding people who like what you do, in a world of a lot more choices. And so that does change the math, and maybe changes the marketing somewhat. But he said, don't think of it as you're not the distribution system. You're the creator of content that maybe somebody will find interesting, or worthy of their time. So anyway, I just went faster all the time. And I'll tell you a story that kind of came into play when I figured out that, while my substance use went up and up and up, I finally got diagnosed with mental health stuff. So what did I do? Being a good patient, I was prescribed a bunch of medications. I took them all, and I kept doing everything else, which was probably this. And then I'd get on a motorcycle and go 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, why not?
I should be dead 10,000 times. I should be dead or in jail.
Right.
All I was lucky. All I was lucky that it didn't happen. But I kept thinking that my answer was to go faster, and that as the volume of things were coming in my life and my work life and everything else, it's that, well, if I'm good at going fast, so maybe if I go faster, then I can get more of this stuff done. Seemed like a good idea at the time. Totally wrong. Learning this is how I learned about slowing down. Well, two things. My entry to treatment, which I made the choice on my own, is that one day I woke up. It was a Monday morning, November 17th, 2008. I had my breakfast of 2 OxyContin and 4 Leinenkugel's Northwood beers out of Wisconsin. And I said, what am I doing? Because I had, I'll tell you how the OxyContin thing happened, because it's a pretty good story. But I'll kind of go on this for a while. And that's when I decided that I stopped for a moment and had that moment where I said, I have tried everything that I can think of to turn this oil tanker around, and nothing's worked. And the harder I try, the worse it gets. And so that morning I finally decided, you know what? And this is the this is where I broke from the man thing, is I need a second opinion here. I need somebody else to take a look at me and to say, maybe you can find something that I can't. So I made the call and I went to treatment. And treatment itself, as far as the curriculum, I don't know if it was a big deal. But what was a big deal was the people I met and the people who were there. And it's funny who you connect with. Connection again. I connected with a guy, young guy. I was 47 at the time. He's 22, shaved head, tats everywhere, black baggy, everything. Nervous, in the corner. You can tell spent a lot of time on the street, had to watch his back, had to look out for stuff. And here I am, somebody's dad, you know? So it's like if you were judging books by covers, which you can never do, you would have never put the two of us together. But he did something for me that I think about every day. As we were in a small group and we took a break in the middle. It was about, I don't know if it was 12 people, 14 people, something like that. He came over to me and all he said was, dude, you got to slow down. And it's hit me like a ton of bricks, because here's what I did. And maybe this is an example. I went from being out of control and going way too fast because I thought that's how I would get through this stuff, to making the decision to go get help, which I was very enthusiastic about. And so what did I do? I went too fast in the recovery thing. And it never entered my mind until he said that the problem wasn't what you think the problem is. The problem is that I needed to slow down. The fact that I was going too fast.
I think you said that earlier too. It wasn't
Yeah.
about what you're doing, it's about how you're doing it.
How you do it.
Wow.
And so I said, this is wild. I have to remember this. So I asked him a favor. I said, you have permission the entire time we're together here, however long that is, that if you see me going too fast, doing anything, you have permission to come up to me and tell me to slow the F down.
Yeah.
And he had to do that a lot, especially at the beginning, because I wasn't recognizing when I would slip into that. And I've seen the guy. I saw him once about 6 months after treatment. We got together and had lunch and checked out how we were doing. And I haven't seen him for over 14 years. I think about him every day, because he was the guy who came up to me, and it was as clear as could be. Dude,
I was going to ask if you ever kind of caught back up with the fella.
Never have. And
hope he's okay.
And that's, well, and I think about him every day. You know, I think about him every day. I hope he's doing great. The thing I did for him was he had been told his entire life that he was never going to amount to anything, that he wasn't smart enough to do whatever. You're never going to amount to anything. You're dumb. You might as well just get used to doing whatever. And most of that came from his dad, which is damaging. And I said, hey, I've been around a lot of places, done a lot of things. I know smart people when I see them. You are plenty smart to do anything you decide you want to do.
The fact that you came there signifies that you at least have the wherewithal to realize you have an issue, which a ton of people can't. So,
yeah, some people were there because they wanted to be, and some people were there because they kind of had to be. So, you know, you are correct in that if you have people who are there who want to be, and I use that all the time, every day, is how strong is your want to?
Yeah.
If you want to, a vast majority of people can do this, because it's like I said, the concepts are not that hard. But if you could have the best miraculous sky opening up, angels singing, beams of sunlight, and if your want to isn't there, it ain't gonna matter.
Don't matter at all.
You have
Eyes ain't open, doesn't matter.
Yeah. So yeah, so it's a lot of times, it's people will go, yeah, so you're telling me if I learn how to slow down, all my problems are going to go away. And I say,
No.
well, no, but
Stop reading into it.
that's usually where we start. And it's a simple thing, but it's a really important thing. And
It's funny. Sorry, go ahead.
And it's not, and this is the part that drives the AA guys crazy. Sorry, is that it's not about the substance. When we talk about slowing down, it's not about the substance. It's about everything. It's about slowing yourself down in your life, taking time, making, having a plan in case something that in life is going to happen, not a matter of if, but a matter of when. And so self-awareness, give yourself time to survey a situation, to read it, and have a plan in case you need it, or at least be in a position where you don't overrun your headlights all the time. Give yourself a chance. Know the difference between things like I have control over some things and some things I don't. It's not super complicated stuff. It's just that for the way that we think, a lot of times it just never occurred that this was an option or possibility.
And you know why? Going too fast.
Because I was going too fast. Yeah, I did.
No, it's funny, and not for nothing here. Like, look, I like cigarettes. That's really the only thing that's my only kind of vice.
And a tough one.
For all intents and purposes, I was born addicted to heroin. So I was preconditioned to have like an addictive personality. I haven't latched on to anything. I don't really do anything. I'm kind of actually boring, which works out for me. One thing I've learned with all the interviews, yourself included, and I like to take things from everyone I'm speaking with because you guys are so interesting. In a whole, you're interesting. In a collective group, yeah, there are definitely some similarities, but everyone has their own proverbial stank on it. And the eye-opening thing with you, slow down. And it's such a simple thing. It's like, well, duh. Well, yeah, you say that until you find yourself, we're habitual, stupid creatures, and we do what's comfortable for us. And you form that habit, and you're just running. You can't just stop. That's not how that works. Trains don't just stop on a dime. That's not how they're built. So, it's just very interesting and cool to hear. You were able to find via, whether it be you or that fellow that really kind of got in your noggin. And it's like, dude, like pump your brakes, literally and figuratively. And you had that come to Jesus moment, and now you're like, hey, slow down. And it was actually what's funny is, and it's super ironic because you said you tell people to slow down. They're like, okay, that'll solve my problem. It's like, ironically enough, you just thinking that is showing that you're not slowing down because your instant gratification that'll fix everything. No, stop it. It's when I hit him on the nose with the newspaper. Bad.
It gives you the opportunity to apply kind of a next level of more complex things like self-awareness.
Yeah.
If I said before that our perception of the world and how we operate in it is kind of based on the fact that we think everybody thinks that way.
Yeah.
Or, as is the case in a lot of cases, everybody communicates that way. That everybody is, that's built the way that I am. So I hear this all the time from like spouses and things of people who are having, substance issues, and they'll say, why don't you just quit? Or if you love me, you would quit.
Okay.
Or, buck it up, try harder. And it misses the point entirely. And one of the problems we have with relationships and everything else is taking that step back and understanding that people are built differently.
Right.
And that to having to realize that not everyone is built the way that you are, and you can't judge everyone based on the way that you are built. It's kind of like you have a couple that one speaks French and one speaks German. Well, the thing is that the French person doesn't need to speak German, but needs to understand something about it.
Yeah.
And vice versa. Opposites attract, right? We hear that all the time, and it's true. But if I cannot tell you how many couples I run into doing this where one's an extrovert, one's an introvert. And
the wife do a podcast, and we literally did a 3-part series on reasons why we shouldn't work, and that was literally the first episode we did. And it's funny. Yeah.
I look at introverts and extroverts in this way now, and it helped clarify it for me a little bit. Is whether you're an extrovert or introvert is how do you recharge your batteries? What do you need to recharge your batteries? If you're an extrovert, you need to be around people. That charges you up. That gives you energy.
Get out of my head. Did you listen to my episode? What are you doing? No, that's exactly what she says that I need. And with her, I know if we're going out to do something social, she is an absolute bitch the whole time when we're going there, because she's miserable, because she's trying to pump herself up to deal with people. That's
and introvert needs their time alone to recharge their batteries so that they're able to be social.
Wow.
If you try to do everything together the exact same way, one of you is probably going to be happy and one of you is going to be nuts.
Yep.
And it's that stepping back and going, okay, this exists in the world. That these kinds of people exist in the world. I don't have to, it's not that I'm going to change the way that I live, but I'm going to change the way that I understand that you do things differently and need to do things differently. And that's okay.
Understanding is huge. And I think unfortunately a lot of people, one, can't communicate that, two, nor can they understand that. And then they come to this impasse where you either just get real pissy and you just shut everything down, or you just steamroll over the other person or through the situation, which is as detrimental, if not worse. So,
I mean, what is empathy? Empathy is understanding there's a difference and working to respect that and to honor that and to try to understand that and to try to act accordingly.
Yep.
That's an advanced skill. That takes work. It takes work to do that. Some people come by it very naturally. Others have to work at it, but it's like it's stepping outside of yourself for a moment and understanding that the way that you do
really
everything,
what empathy is.
is not necessarily the way to do these things. It's different ways to get into the same place.
And what's really cool about you, man, and I just want to throw this in here just because it's so impressive to me, just how you articulate things, how you, with your vernaculars, how you explain certain things. It's you almost put a no shit moment on it. And it's like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Now that you said it it's almost like you put layman's terms into layman's terms. It's just really impressive, man. I really appreciate that about you.
The concepts are not difficult to understand. It's just having them presented and to go, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
I never thought that, I got a million stories I could have you here all day, but one of the ones that I use, well, when I'm, I talked about connection, and I'll try to condense this here a little bit. And part of when I start with somebody, I got to find out where can I connect with this person.
Yeah.
And thankfully, one of the things that Face It Together that we do that's really great is we have our first impressions team. And what they know is they know coaches, and they know who, because we all come from vastly different backgrounds. We're different in so many ways, yet we all understand we're a bunch of knuckleheads, which is why we're here. And I mean that in the most attractive, I love the word knucklehead. I'm proud to be a knucklehead. So number one, they do a remarkably great job of having the initial pairing to give you your best chance of
Nice.
connecting. I always ask two questions at the beginning. And because they're safe, they don't feel threatening, yet I can learn a lot about somebody. And that first one is where did you grow up? And so when they start, again, and being a listener and being a reactor to things, which you as a host, that's what you're doing all the time, is you are reacting to what I'm saying. And
Right.
it gives you things that all of a sudden I'm curious about. I want to know about this, or I think that's a load of crap, or whatever.
I'm an excitable fellow, so it's
Yeah. So, you know, and by the answers they give, it also can give you a launching pad for more questions.
right.
And then you can get a little deeper. The second
Yep.
one is what do you do for fun?
Ooh.
And one of the things that the radio career did for me is it put me in front of an amazing array of amazing people. And being curious, I learned something from each of them. So I know a little bit about a lot of stuff.
Nice.
And so I find out, okay, it's kind of like what language is this person speaking? Are they speaking sports? Are they speaking cars? Are they speaking reading? Are they speaking gymnastics? Are they speaking, whatever it is? And if the answer is, if they have to sit there and think about it, what do I do for fun? And they can't come up with anything. Well, that tells me a lot too. Back to isolation, right? You aren't interacting. You don't have that thing. So anyway, I start doing that, but, and if anybody gives me a little bit about that, they're a little bit of a motorhead. I rode motorcycles for years. I was like an 8,000 mile a year guy. I rode a lot and traveled out, traveled the coasts, and it was great. I loved it. Should have been dead 10,000 times, but I did.
That's neither here nor there.
I had great passion for it. Yeah, I'm here today. But I tell a story, and I tell a story about in 1998, a friend and I went up to Brainerd, Minnesota, the Brainerd Lakes area, which is kind of the it's kind of the, I don't want to say stereotypical, but it's kind of the ultimate going up north in Minnesota for the summer.
Okay.
To get away from the heat, up in the pine trees, up in the lakes, up in the cabin, on a boat, fishing, water, all that kind of thing.
Right.
In the middle of that is a racetrack.
Oh.
Brainerd International Raceway, and which starts out with it has a drag strip on one end, and where the big boys come every year and have the nationals there, and then at the end of that is you start into about 3 miles of 20 some turns. So it's like a sports car track.
Okay.
That first curve when you're going through there, they're going about 180 miles an hour.
Easy.
And I went down to the fence to see if I could track. My eyes were not fast enough to track them. I had to back up. So anyway, we're up there, and it's a fun time, and we went up there for the AMA Superbike races. I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself there, but Superbike races, which was really fun. It was very laid back. It wasn't such a big deal that you didn't have access to things. Yet the people who were doing what they're doing were doing it on a very high level.
Right.
So it was interesting to see. Well, the place is busy. Brainerd is busy in the summer. Anytime the races are in town, it's super busy. We're waiting at a restaurant, waiting for a table, and we see this group of people up by the bar in a kind of a circle, and like they're listening to somebody talk, and then that's exactly what's happening. So we're going, well, we got nothing better to do. Let's do a drive-by and see who's talking. So we went up and we got just about there. And my buddy said, wow. He said, that's Freddie Spencer. And I said, Freddie Spencer? Who the hell is Freddie Spencer? Because he was the race guy. I wasn't. And he said, well, listen to him. And Freddie Spencer was there. He was a retired racer. He was there with ESPN to do commentary on the race. They had a tape delay on it. And Freddie Spencer, I found later, was in racing the boy wonder. At 17 years old, he did things on a motorcycle that nobody else had ever thought of doing. He just did it differently. He just, he was the natural. And at 17, he got everything, full factory sponsorship, the best equipment, the best crews, all the parts, all the stuff, grade A stuff at 17 years old. And so he's telling the story of how he started out. He said, when we started racing, I did what I always did. I got on the bike and I just went as fast as I possibly could. I just pushed everything to get around the track because he had this way of kind of running a rear end around. I mean, it's just really different. He was an innovator. And he said, I'd be out in front of the pack of all these professional racers. I'd be, big half a lap ahead and some would break. Tires would go, brakes would get hot, some would break in the engine, whatever. And in motorcycle racing, if you break down during the race, you're done. So he'd be way out in front, but he was the first one to break down and he finished last. And so the next time he went out and did the same thing, just go like a bat. Well, this time something else broke and he was done. And this pattern went on for a while. And the sponsor said, Freddie, we love you. We think you got a lot of talent, but there's an important piece to the puzzle here is that you can't win if you don't finish. So something's got to change. So here he is, he's telling the story and he's going, here I am, 17 years old. And basically what he was hearing is that however you're doing things is wrong. And he's going that he was saying, my career is going to be over before it even starts.
Right.
So he said, what am I going to do here? So he decides to watch what the old guys do. Now in motorcycle racing, old guys are like 26. There are very few old motorcycle racers. It's hard, physically hard. But he watched how they went about stuff. And this was pre-iPad, pre-everything else. So they had notebooks because they would go to these tracks every year and they would go to their notes and they would go, okay, this is what I learned the last time I was here. And then I would go practice those things where I had trouble the year before. Like you might have that big sweeping turn. You might have a chicane type curve. You also might have one where you turn where it's almost 90 degrees. You go in and you almost stop, but you have to make the right angle turn. And then it's all about, do you hit it at the right spot? Do you brake at the right spot? Do you accelerate at the right spot? And so he did that too. He before he was just messing around during practice and he would go and he would practice and pretty soon he started to do better. And it was about backing off and not hitting everything as hard as he could, but rather what's the most efficient way for me to get around using the skills that I have. And he said, the lesson I learned, and we're sitting there listening to him. He said, the lesson I learned is that sometimes you got to go slow to go fast. And I went, sometimes you got to go slow to go fast. Now, it took me another 15 years to apply that to my life. It took me
better late than pregnant.
Yeah. And it's funny. I applied it to my career. I applied it to the talk part, the on-air part of my career before I applied it to everything else, which I don't know why. And if I had one thing to do over, that's one thing I'd do over. But it's not always about hitting it as hard as you can hit it. It's about being smart, going fast when it makes sense, and being meticulous about going slow when it makes sense. Sometimes you got to go slow to go fast. I think of that one every day, right along with, dude, you got to slow down. You got to learn to slow down. But in the process, if I tell that story to the right person, it's like they can relate.
Right.
They can, okay, let's put it into terms. And if I've done my job and told the story, then a person will follow along.
Right.
And thankfully, my radio career led for a lot of experiences that are story worthy. And hopefully they have a point, when when we go through. Hopefully they have a point, and that I've chosen them carefully.
Right.
But yeah, it's so the overarching thing here is
Yeah. What's your mic drop moment here? Which I think you kind of already blew your load there because the last one was pretty good mic.
It's not about the substance, and it's not about sobriety. We use substances to deal with something else. We use it as a treatment for something else that's going on, and that something else is different for everybody. And once we get into, I'm not interested in the substance as much as I'm interested in the why.
And that's what you said initially. You said we're not even going to get into the substances really. It's more the other stuff, and you absolutely are on point.
After I've developed a relationship with somebody, we'll go through the hour, and I'll go, "Oh, before you go, how many times did we mention the word alcohol today?"
Yeah.
And they'll go, "None." I said, "Isn't that something?"
Yep.
You know, because it's when you start dealing with the why I do what I do, why I have the desire to hit the pause button. That's often how I will think about it, is hitting the pause button, because a lot of this stuff works really well. It'll let you pause right now. Yeah. And for a short while, you don't have to think about it. It's all there. Nothing changes. You know, it's still there next time around. But when you start to deal with and work your way through the why, in many cases, not all, because trauma is terribly powerful. Severe mental illness is terribly powerful, and I don't know what to do with those. What I can do is I know people who do, and then I'll refer people to them. But for the vast number of people, once we get into the why, the substance thing kind of takes care of itself. For a lot of men, my job, the thing they need the most is somebody to talk to.
Right.
Like we're doing here. They don't have that because, again, we're men. We're not supposed to have to do that. Right. And I do have a lot about it. I can tell them that all day. But I think a more powerful thing is to show them, you know, doing like I'm doing with you today, that it's okay to talk about stuff, that it's okay to not be perfect, that it's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Okay to not be okay.
These things. Yes. And so the good news in all of that is that a lot of people aren't that far off, and they can be helped, and they can be helped relatively inexpensively. That not everybody needs to go to a 30-day inpatient treatment program at $35,000 a month.
Right.
Some do, not everybody. And what encourages me about that is that, you know, so often the thing is that we know how to help people, but we don't have the money to do it.
Right.
Nice. Someday, the insurance company, I know three things. The older I get, the fewer things I know to be certain. You know, when you're 20, you think you got it all figured out. When you're my age, it's like, I'm down to three. Those three are: people dislike change.
Right.
Number two, insurance companies do not like to spend money. Number three, it is never, ever too cold for ice cream.
Fair.
I know those things to be true. And one day the insurance companies will figure out that not everybody needs $50,000 from us to go to something that may or may not work. That maybe for a lot of people, it's stuff like this that is, the concepts are not difficult to understand. You just need to come and talk and do things. And that's what we do.
Where can we find you?
WeFaceItTogether.org. WeFaceItTogether.org. You go on there, you'll see everything. You'll see my lovely mug along with my colleagues who grace it much better than I do. And there's a little box there, and just say, hey, contact me. Put your info in there and we'll get back to you. One of the things that is so frustrating about addiction help and mental health help is that you have to wait so darn long for it.
Right.
We talk to people. We talk to you within 24 to 48 hours. And
Oh,
usually it's quicker than that. And again, we do a lot of this remotely, just like you and I are doing here. So, I mean, we talk to people all over the place, and it's different, but I think it's not the answer to addiction, but it's a real valuable one that I think fills in a lot of the cracks and will get help to people faster. And if anything else, again, during my life, I've done a lot of things. Having had mental health issues, I've learned a lot about mental health issues. I don't have the answer to them, but I do know how to find a doctor. And I do know how to help people who may have never gone through the healthcare system because they either couldn't afford it, never thought of it, were scared, yada, yada, yada. That I can help walk them through and hopefully make them feel like, okay, you can trust me on this, that this is what you need to check out. Then you decide once you get there whether it's right for you, but it's nothing to be scared of. Talking about stuff is nothing to be scared of. Being different is nothing to be scared of. It's just we need to change a few things in how we approach everything.
and that's a great point. That's a good way to kind of look at it. And I really do hope whoever, or not whoever, but the folks that are listening that need someone, or need some reassurance. Hey, it's okay to talk. Definitely, and I'm gonna link all the information on the show notes.
Good.
All that, but
and coaching's picking up. And you know what? You can talk to one of my colleagues, and their approach is going to be different because they have their experience. I think the principles end up being very similar.
Right. Oh,
but it's the approach. It's finding somebody you connect. It's not about sobriety. It's about connection.
I like it, man. I think you're doing God's work out here, and I'm glad to see another success story. Honestly, that's kind of how I view folks I speak with that have gone through the perils and the peaks and valleys of addiction. And it's just, once again, another interesting perspective. So, I'm gonna make sure, like I said, link all the information in the show notes here. I appreciate you so much for the time. I know we're a little up against the clock there. I didn't mean to run it down as much as we did there. I don't want to take up your day there, but I just appreciate you taking the time out and sharing your message, man. And I don't know. I think that's a very helpful and great thing you're doing. And just keep on fighting the good fight, man. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Rich. And I appreciate the time and appreciate the forum to talk about it. And
Absolutely.
if I can ever help you in the future, you just let me know.
Fair enough, buddy.
Okay.
Well, listen, you enjoy the rest of your Sioux Falls day. I'm gonna run around the rest of the day and try not to go too fast.
Good luck with it. And you do that a day at a time. You do the best you can today. That's all you can do.
Hey, that's the best way to look at it, man. I'm not a Superman. I'm just trying to make it through the next day.
Exactly.
All right, Joe. Well, I
Thanks,
appreciate
Rich.
you, brother. You take it easy, and I'll get this out here within the day, and I'll send you a link to your email, and I'll send you my links to everything, and yada, yada, yada. You can do with it with you want, and all the other happy horse stuff that happens with the whole post-game stuff. So.
Very good.
All right, buddy. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks, Rich. Appreciate it. Again, you ever get in a pinch, just holler. I'm here way too much.
Well, I got your email, so that's now a you problem. So.
All right, man. Have a good day.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it.
You bet.
Bye.
Bye-bye.